Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is actress, singer E.G. Daly and artist Rey Bustos. Rey just did a sketch today, so she went to Beverly Hills High, and she is the multi-hyphenate of multi-hyphenates. She's a voiceover specialist, she's an actress, she's a composer, she's a singer, and where did you go to learn all those things? Did you go to school for each one of those things?
I went to the school of hard knocks. No, I did actually. I did. I studied singing. I studied music my whole life, and I studied acting in some level or some way my whole life. And in doing all the music things, I learned to produce music and writing. I never really thought of myself as a writer, but I started writing music, and people would say, "Well, how'd you write that song?" And I'd be like, "I don't really know. It just sort of happened."
Did you come from a background of theater, music, acting?
Not really. My family, my mother and father were Tunisian immigrants. They came here they're North African, Tunisian, French Jew. And they came out here from Europe, and they had 5 kids in like different countries. One in one in France, and one in Israel, and one in Sioux City, Iowa, and then my brother and I were born here. But none of them were artistic in any way like that. But then for some reason, they were smart with like building and stuff. For some reason, all the brothers and sisters became very musical. So
they did?
Yeah, we had all these crazy instruments and.
I think that's the Tunisian background. Have you ever been to Tunis?
I haven't, but I'd like to go.
It's so fabulous. Yeah. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I'd like
I was there not long ago. But you kind of like fit into that genre because there's always something mystical going on, and you never know when the next thing is going to be a song or an act or somebody playing.
Wow, maybe that explains it.
That's it.
Because I never know what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
This play is sort of a compilation of everything that I do.
This play, which is called Listen Closely,
right.
And it's at the
it's at the Lee Strasberg Theater in Los Angeles. Yeah.
But I want to build up to this play because I started with acting. You acted, and I love this name, with Rob Zombie directing.
Yeah.
Is that a real name?
It is actually a real name. Rob Zombie is a rock star. And if you look at him, he's very scary looking, but very beautiful, but very scary looking. And he's a brilliant director, and he's got this amazing eye. And I was fortunate enough to get cast in this movie he has coming out, Devil's Rejects. And it's the sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses, which was already out and had a big cult following.
Did you have to do really scary things?
I didn't have, I think I got my eye shot out, and I think I got to try to shoot someone. And actually I did play a little bit of a wacky person in the movie, I think. But I didn't have to do anything that outrageous. But my character is outrageous. Candy, she's just whacked.
So from films, let's talk about National Lampoon, Pledge This.
Right. In National Lampoon, I play Paris Hilton's mother.
How could you?
I don't know. It just happened. I have very big hair, and it's sort of like I sort of went for a Tammy Faye sort of look. When I got to the set, I was like, she has to be like Tammy Faye. And
did you know her mother, Kathy? Because she used to wear big hair
well, that's
too
how
when
my
I
hair
first
was.
met her.
No, so my impulses were good. I'd met her recently. I've known her now and stuff. But actually, I'd known Paris from before I started shooting the movie as well.
Were they nice? Were they happy to have you playing that role?
Well, yeah. Paris and I have a little history together because my ex-husband, the father of my children, happens to be the guy in that Paris Hilton famous sex tape.
Is that right?
The infamous Rick Solomon. Yeah, that's my ex-husband. And so I actually had a history with Paris.
Well, then wasn't she kind of like, ooh, I don't want to see E.G.?
No, because I have to say she'd always been really very sweet with me. And we did have a little time where I was a little like, there's something going on between you two while we were married. And then Whatever.
Was it?
I can't say,
I don't
but I
wanna
do
hear.
know that I suspected some things, and so I was a little concerned. And then there was a little time where I felt a little at war with her in my own heart because I was hurting because of my divorce. But we actually, she's always been very sweet, and we actually, when I showed up on the set, they didn't know if there was going to be a cat fight or
That's what I was wondering.
or whatnot. They were a little concerned about casting me at one point, but it all worked out, and I got to the set, and it was very sweet. She's lovely and she's sweet, and
So it was a good role for you.
it was very fun, and it was a funny part, and it's a cameo, but it's very funny.
What does EG stand for?
It stands for Elizabeth, which is my real first name, and my real last name, which I kind of keep confidential, but which is actually the French, Tunisian, North African Jew name.
Which is a great name, probably.
Right? You know,
Fabulous.
it didn't work in Hollywood, but it worked.
So EG. Okay, so we got the acting. We
Right.
got the voiceover with the Rugrats.
Right.
Let's do that. That was an Emmy winner,
Right.
Rugrats, and you did Tommy Pickles.
I do Tommy Pickles. Yeah, we did about 3 features, I think.
What is that? How does that sound?
Tommy is like, oh, hold on here, diapers are going in. Baby's got to do what a baby's got to do.
How did you learn to do that?
I don't know. It was, I don't know. It's like, I always tell people, people can go like this with their thumbs and their bones
Yeah.
do weird things, or they flip their eyelids upside down. Well, to me, it was just something that I did growing up. I just did little weird sounds and voices, and I could hear people.
Do you have a voiceover agent?
I do.
Oh,
I do.
so you do. So,
do.
and you do a lot of different things, because my favorite one is Bam Bam.
I actually did Bam Bam in the feature. I redubbed the little boy's voice in the feature, Bam Bam.
How does Bam Bam sound?
Bam Bam, he's screamy and screechy.
And you did some work for Lorenzo's Oil, too. Was that
did.
voiceover?
Well, yeah, that was actually a real little boy. It was with Nick Nolte and Susan Sarandon, and the director, George Miller, called me in because they needed someone that could re-loop the boy because it was a very dramatic role.
Why do you do boys' voices, though? Tommy and Bam Bam?
I know.
And this
I did
boy?
Babe and Babe 2 as well, yeah. I do girls and I do women. I do pretty much everything. It's just that I'm most known for
Does
the
this show
boys.
what you do?
Yeah,
I'm
I
going
do
to
all
hold
those
it while you're
characters.
talking.
Yeah.
So tell me about Lorenzo's Oil.
So in that particular movie, I had to go in, and in the movie, he starts to lose his speech abilities, and he starts to become ill, and his brain doesn't function. So they needed somebody that could dramatically put that across. So they hire me, and I can sound like the boy, and do do what I needed to vocally to make the film more impacting.
Did you say words?
Oh yeah, I mean, but it was
Like-
more
like
like when he
what,
was starting
real
to lose
deep?
things like I
I see.
just very retching,
I see, I
painful,
see.
painful things. So
That was an Oscar-winning movie, wasn't it?
yeah.
It was a great movie.
yeah.
What style do you call your work? I mean, you do all this stuff. What do you call yourself?
I just say that I'm a specialty voice person. I say that, laughing at me. I say that I'm a specialty voice person because I do everything with the voice. I do boys, girls, women's promos, like on TV shows you'll hear, coming up next on Channel 5, whatever.
Oh, do you? You
I
do things in between?
I do all of that stuff,
But
commercials.
how do they know when to call you? I mean, they don't use people at the station to do that.
Not really. They just know
Oh,
now.
I
They
didn't
know
know
me and
that.
they just call me, so I'm very lucky like that.
I thought they just used somebody who was there at the station.
No, there's all those voices. There's like, please take the ticket. The lady
Yeah.
when you pull up, there's voices at
Do you do
Disney that I'm like,
those?
I haven't done those, but I've done ones at amusement parks where it's like, step up to the line or whatever,
And it's recorded over and over and over?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things you can do with the voice that you're not aware of,
That's so great.
Yeah.
Well, talking about your voice,
Yeah.
and we said you were a singer and a composer.
Yeah.
You have a CD out.
The CD is Listen Closely soundtrack, which has been blowing up, and we're getting orders from Sweden and Germany and all over the world for this little soundtrack. It's only available on my site, but which I can't say. How frustrating. At any rate, so it is blowing up, and it's people that can't make it to the show have been just really loving the soundtrack.
But so they can listen to the soundtrack. But you've written songs.
Yeah, I write my own stuff.
But
This-
you've also written for movies, right?
Yeah, I do. I compose for movies and soundtracks, and that's just like they'll call and say, we need a theme song, and I write them, and then I sing them, and they usually want to hire me to sing them and write them.
Oh, and then you sing them too?
Yeah.
Do you play an instrument?
I do. I play.
You're too much.
I play a little guitar and a little piano, which is what I write most of the music on, is just a little guitar, a little piano. In the play, I actually do 16 different voices.
That's what I was just going to ask you. So
Yeah.
you use your voice specialty.
I do.
We have this behind you, but I'm going to hold this
Listen
up
Closely.
too. Tell me what Listen Closely is. It's a one-woman autobiographical
musical. And the reason why it's called Listen Closely is because my whole life I was in the film business, and it was always about how you looked on the outsides, and what actually became the thing that made me the most successful was the voice, was just the voice. So it's called Listen Closely because for two reasons. For one, because it's about intuition and listening to your little internal voice. And for two, I became very successful at the voice, and it had nothing to do with the physical thing, which is pretty cool.
But you wear costumes. And
in the show, it's all about me, and I'm on stage, and I'm wearing a bra and panties pretty much
That's
the whole
it?
show. Well,
I mean, you don't change into different
I
costumes?
do. I change, but the majority of the show, I wear a bra and panties. But I do wear a robe at one point, and I wear a different robe, and I wear a men's shirt and biker boots. And,
Who directed it?
It's directed by Sal Romeo, who's a very respected director. He's won, I don't know, hundreds of awards for directing hundreds of plays.
Did you pick him? Did you ask him?
No, this place sort of the whole thing picked itself. I was working with one of the girls that helped me write. When I was writing the play, I brought in a friend of mine, Eliza Schneider, who's done theater all around town. She had a show called Freedom of Speech, and she's this brilliant, genius girl. And I hired her to help me with writing.
Oh, I wondered how you do something like that. You don't write it all yourself.
Well, I wrote a book version, which nobody's seen, but it's like 150 pages of like just stuff all true stuff that had occurred.
That you've done?
Right, and
so
I wrote
this
that.
is all about you.
It's all autobiographical. It's very crazy, and people can't believe that it's true for the most part. People walk out either crying or laughing, and it's been a very powerful experience and very cathartic. But I did write this book version, and then I called on my friend Eliza, who I'd worked with on some children's projects, and I asked her to come in and help me edit together from the long version. So she was brilliant at that. She has this little computer mind, and together we cut and pasted till I came out with a format. Then she said, go work with Sal Romeo, who she had been working with.
Oh, so then he came in, and
he was the man.
Knew her style.
Well, he had been directing her play and a lot of one-man shows around town that were very successful. So it sort of just dropped into my lap, and Sal is the man.
What
Sal
happens with the one-woman show? Is it just like a showcase? Is it egotistical? Is it something that you want to take to Broadway, off-Broadway? Why?
This one is not. It's the one thing is that I did not want it to be sort of self-indulgent and me, just like me, the me show. It's very entertaining.
It's not the me show.
It's not the me show. It is about me, but it's not the me show. It's very, very entertaining. There's music and singing and dancing and choreography.
But no one else in the play.
No one else.
Who does the music?
There are 16 different characters, but they're all me. But they're very believably 16 different people. So it's not like standing there watching me talk about me, me talking to me. It's me talking to all these different people, and they all talk.
What about the background sets?
It's a very minimal set. It's pretty much a box and a chair and a coat rack with lots of different things, changes of clothes on it.
Oh, that's where your clothes are.
And the lighting is very important. There's a guy named Gil that does our lighting. It's pretty important.
And music?
The music, there's
you're
56
dancing.
pre-recorded sound effects and sound cues that are all pre-recorded. So it's literally all in one CD.
But it takes doesn't it take an electrician? I mean,
I have my guy who's my assistant director and my sound guy and the choreographer, Jake Mason, who runs the sound, and he's sort of in the show with me because he and I work very closely together with sound cues. There's so many, and the lighting. So it's really Jake and I and Gil, the lighting man, and the show comes together.
The thing that's interesting, I think, about a one-person show is that director has to move you around the stage to keep your audience interested in what you're doing.
You will not be bored for 1 second of this.
And how long is it?
It's an hour and 15, and literally there's not a minute of time where there's not something going on that's absolutely
And you
insane.
Never leave the stage?
Never. For an hour. No, I can't believe it. Sometimes I'm like, oh God, I have to do the show tonight. It's like running a marathon because it's physically very demanding. And yeah.
Well, before we go, because it's almost time to leave, tell me about the pig.
Oh, Babe the pig. I actually have a pig. I was wondering, is she talking about Mimi, my pig at the house?
Do you have a pig?
I do. I have a little pig named Mimi. But Babe the Pig, that was the same director, George Miller, who directed Lorenzo's Oil, who I did another movie for called Happy Feet, starring Elijah Wood. It's an animation thing, and Nicole Kidman, and I did some work for him in that too. Babe the Pig was just a great part to get to do.
And what'd you play?
Babe.
You did play Babe.
In the second Babe movie, and he's sort of like, I was looking for my mama. I was wondering if you know where she is. That's Babe.
That's so cute. Thank you for
Thanks
being
for having
with us.
me. And this
Thank
beautiful
you.
artwork. Wow.
Sophia
Very impressed.
Gasparian.
She's fantastic
Thank
and very
you.
bright.
I'm
yeah.
glad. She's a great artist.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thanks. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Our guest is artist Rey Bustos, who was born in Colombia, South America, and raised in Glendale, California. He went to Art Center College, where he now teaches anatomy. Tell us, Rey, what is an artist doing teaching anatomy?
I can't imagine any art school not having anatomy. So it's just a tradition that started many years ago at Art Center, where we've had a succession of wonderful anatomy teachers, and I'm just at the tail end of one.
I'm going to just show this because this is true anatomy. This is one of your drawings, and it just shows, I guess, why you're teaching anatomy. Do you teach drawing as well?
Yes, very much so. That's the whole idea of teaching anatomy. It's a foundation for good drawing.
Let's talk about that. That has, what? Whew.
Well, this
all the muscles.
Well, this particular drawing was actually inspired by a drawing I saw by Peter Paul Rubens. So I was explaining to my students all the various muscles and how they intertwine with each other, especially in the arm area.
So that's part of the anatomy lesson, I guess.
Very much so.
Did you ever go to med school?
No, I was very fortunate when I was a student at Art Center. My anatomy teacher, Bern Hogarth, was an amazingly great anatomist. So basically I learned through him and through reading.
When you came to America, you were very, very young.
Yes.
And you didn't speak the language.
Right.
So I understand you used art as a communicator.
That's actually a great point, because at 6, I didn't even realize that there were other languages outside of Spanish. So I gravitated towards drawing. I don't remember ever drawing much in Colombia. It wasn't until I was here.
Really?
It was kind of like an equalizer. It made me equal with other kids because I couldn't understand what they were saying.
That's really interesting. Was there any drawing in your family?
No, not really. We have a lot of poets and writers, but
so there's some
no
artistic,
visual. Yes,
but
definitely.
nothing visual?
Correct.
So when was it that you discovered the masters? Because you're very influenced. Michelangelo, Rubens, you said, Raphael. When did you start discovering these artists?
I think from an early age, just living inside encyclopedias and just looking through biographies and little snippets of people's lives, I just kept coming across these wonderful artists.
Was it when you were young? Was it also a way to like bury yourself in something that?
Yes, very much so. Simply because I was a little behind in my reading skills. The one thing
That's
I could read is
interesting.
encyclopedias, because they were short snippets. Instead of reading a whole book about somebody, I would just get like a page or two.
Oh, that's interesting. So, and you gravitated toward these artists, though.
Yes, and the reason I did that is it just, to me, it was fascinating. I wanted to know a little bit more about what was under the skin. And through
and you
these
could
artists.
see it through
Yes.
these artists.
Yes,
Oh, so you
you
were
bet.
already looking at the anatomy of work.
Exactly, and one of the things that we did in the 60s, all us kids, especially the boys, where we all had Marvel comics.
Oh, yeah.
So what we would do is just copy Captain America and Iron Man and all those guys.
And they were...
Yes, and at those
were
days,
muscle-bound,
yes,
weren't
and
they?
those artists really knew a lot of anatomy, the artists that were working those days.
Oh, so they were really anatomical, no.
Anatomically correct.
Thank you. Anatomically
Yes.
correct,
Yes.
actually. You never think about that. There was a
Yes.
show on the comics in Los Angeles, The Hammer and Mocha did it, and I didn't even think to look at that part of it, like the anatomical
it is, and
part
it's very
of it.
admirable, because in many cases, these artists, just like myself, had to learn most of the stuff on their own. So it's their own initiative to just explore more and more about what the body consisted of.
So you mentioned Rubens. What
Yes.
did you learn from Rubens? I'm going to ask you what you took away from each
Okay.
of those artists, maybe as
bet.
influences.
Well, what's interesting in the case of Peter Paul Rubens, the one that I see more of myself in, is I didn't see it until later. It was me not emulating him, but me being myself, and then seeing somebody from the past that actually fit my mold.
Would this
Do
be
you see a
something like this?
Yes, very much so. Very much so. That's very much my work, but it's also, the more I look at Peter Paul Rubens, the more I see myself in his work as well.
You could fit,
Yes.
it interchanges.
Yeah, it's almost like if you have a band and it sounds like the Beatles, and all of a sudden you discover the Beatles, you will like them because, like, oh, they have the kind of the same feel.
What about Leonardo? Da
Again,
Vinci.
yes, Leonardo is amazing because he had a more clinical approach to the body and a more scientific approach. Peter Paul Rubens took that and made it a little bit more like a dance.
Blew it up a little bit too, or no?
More like he put a little bit more pizzazz. It's jazzier, whereas Leonardo and Michelangelo were a little bit more formal.
I was going to say Michelangelo next.
Yes.
What kind? That was the same kind of
Same
influence.
thing, very formal.
But if you think of the ceiling,
Yes.
if you think of the ceiling at the Vatican, and you see the long arms, and
Right.
I never thought about that as having to look at the anatomy of something.
Well, when I look at Michelangelo's work or Leonardo's, I can't help but to see anatomy. They knew it as well as most doctors do now.
But you're bringing that to the forefront
yes.
now, so that we can understand that, or at least be
Yes.
aware of it.
Yes, I'm not the only one, but I'm one of the few that does
Yeah.
this to this degree.
Because it's almost like the great masters now, today, they
Right.
say you're I read that you were in the, not the shadow of Rubens, but like stepping down the path.
The footsteps is a little bit more accurate, to not take away anything from my predecessors. But it's come to a point where there's less and less of us. You would think that we're getting more and more ahead and more
Right.
advanced, but we're not.
Are
We're
you
losing a lot of
teaching-
this knowledge.
Are you teaching many people at school about this? I mean, do you have
Yes.
artists who will continue this practice?
Yes, I believe so, because that's the one thing a good teacher can instill in his students. It's not so much the knowledge, but the passion for what it
the
is
passion. The passion
that
is great
I'm
too.
teaching.
You use live models in your
Yes,
classes.
definitely.
And how do you get them? Do they feel?
Oh, that's. Yeah, go ahead. I'm
do
sorry.
they feel intimidated coming to sit, or is it just a group of
No.
people that
They're
are live models?
actually professional artist models, and
I
they're
see.
fabulous, and they come in all shapes and sizes, sexes, colors, everything. It's just people,
I see.
basically. So yeah, there's a whole circuit out there, and
So
we
is
all
there
know
like
each
an
other.
agency that you go to?
No.
Oh no.
No. There are, and I've been doing this so many years that it's just very easy. It's like having your Rolodex of people that you know. It's like I have my Rolodex with my models, and in the case of Art Center College of Design, for instance, they have somebody who books them for me.
Oh.
So I just write a list of my favorite models, and they're brought to my class.
And then how long do they stay in a class? Would you have a live model?
Well, my classes are 5 hours long.
Oh, they are?
But I do lecture a lot, so it's not like the model has to sit there for 5 hours, Joan.
But the student has to sit there for
student
5 hours.
Yes, but I do too. I have to stand there for 5 hours. So
how do you teach them? What do you teach them to look for?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because what I tell my students, especially at Art Center, because that's the most inclusive, the most comprehensive class that I teach, is I have them really know the skeleton first. The skeleton is of the utmost importance when it comes to figure drawing or painting. So it's the way I tell my students oftentimes, if I have a chair just like the one I'm sitting on right now, and I drape something over it, it's still a chair. And if I put more stuff over it, it's still a chair.
So you're
the
putting
chair,
skin on top
yes,
of the bones.
The drapery means nothing without the chair. And the same thing with the muscles over the skeleton.
That's very interesting. You have your work, which is on the set here, that
Yes.
painting looks like these little great masters' works in a small scale, which I think you like to work in.
Yes. Now, the small scale, funny, it's a funny little story simply because when I was a student, I didn't have much space. So everything I did was small, and I just liked the format. It's more intimate.
But with this master style,
Yes.
it fits into the credo of the San Marino Gallery where you're
Yes.
showing. How did they come to just show this kind of art?
Well, that is what they specialize in, is other periods. I just happen to fit right in simply because I am almost of another century.
Oh, they have old works,
Yeah,
and
oh,
then
you
you're
bet.
the contemporary.
I think I'm the only artist in there that's still alive,
Oh,
Joan.
oh.
And I'm hoping to keep it that way. But I'm telling
Oh.
you, yes, they have beautiful works of art in there, and I am the living artist, so you
Oh.
could see me sitting on their couch often.
I'm going to show a couple of these just because I think these are some of the work that you can see at the San Marino Gallery in San Marino, California.
That's right.
This. You want to say something about that?
They are, and you could see even with your cameras that a lot of these are labeled, and it's because I do these in front of my students.
You do them right in the class?
Exactly, you bet. It's like performance art in a sense. But it is important for me as a teacher, as an educator, to actually be drawing in front of them and showing them what I see.
What materials do you use?
Usually charcoal, or in some cases, I use a Prismacolor pencil, which is more of a waxy type pencil because it's neater and cleaner.
Do they have to be set in any way?
No, not really. Sometimes the charcoal can get a little thick and you might spray it, but I've never really liked spraying my work.
And this one, I think, is just so fabulous.
That's definitely after Peter Paul Rubens. That was taken from one of his poses. I just corrected a few things that I saw that might have been a little off, but it's also hard for me to correct anything from somebody that's such a master.
When you're, today when you came to the studio and we were
Yes.
waiting just to go on, you did this in just a very short amount of time.
When you showed that to me a little earlier, I forgot that I had drawn it because I do it so fast. And I do it as I'm thinking of other things. And that's the way I like to work, because then when I set it down, I look at it later, it is very fresh to me also. And I see it as if I hadn't been the one doing it.
Will you go back and change anything on it?
No, a lot of times once I do something, it's already done. It's like ringing a bell. It's like that the note has been struck, and I just leave it and I don't look back.
Oh, well, I was so happy that you came in and did this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
And Rey
Joan.
Bustos, thank you for being on the Joan Quinn Profiles today.
Thank you.
Keep
Pleasure.
writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.